The Legacy of 223 Maple Street. Ethan stood on the porch of his small, century-old house, his eyes fixed on the letter he had just retrieved from the mailbox. The envelope was unlike anything he had seen before, yellowed with age, bearing no return address, and sealed with wax that had long since cracked. The ink on it was faded, but still legible. Mr. Harold Bennett, 223 Maple Street. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had lived in this house for 2 years, ever since he had bought the charming fixer-upper, with the dream of restoring it to its former glory. But he had never come across the name Harold Bennett. He knew the house had a long history. Built in the late 1800s, it had seen numerous owners over the decades. But this was the first time he had encountered anything linking it to a specific past resident. Curiosity piqued. Ethan stepped back inside, closing the door behind him. The house creaked and groaned as it often did, a testament to its age. He walked to the kitchen table, where the morning sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the worn wood. Carefully, he used a butter knife to slit open the envelope, revealing a single sheet of thick, cream-colored paper. The letter was written in elegant, cursive handwriting. October 15th, 1924. Dear Harold, I hope this letter finds you well. I regret that I could not deliver it in person, but circumstances have made that impossible. The matter I write to you about is of utmost importance. The key you possess, our key, must be kept safe at all costs. There are those who would stop at nothing to obtain it, and the consequences of it falling into the wrong hands would be dire. I know you will do what is right, as you always have. Trust no one but those who share our cause. Remember the night of the full moon, and the promise we made beneath the old oak tree. The time is fast approaching when that promise must be fulfilled. May this letter reach you in time, my friend. Yours in trust, Edward Graves. Ethan read the letter twice, his mind racing. Who was Harold Bennett? What key was Edward referring to? And what was the promise made beneath the old oak tree? Setting the letter down, Ethan decided to do some research. His first stop was his laptop, where he quickly searched local archives. To his surprise, he found that Harold Bennett had indeed lived at 223 Maple Street in the 1920s. He was a young man, just a few years older than Ethan, who had moved into the house after World War I. However, the records were sparse, offering little more than basic information about Bennett's life. There was no mention of Edward Graves, nor any indication that Bennett had been involved in anything unusual. Ethan was about to give up when he stumbled upon an old newspaper article dated October 20th, 1924, 5 days after the letter was written. The headline read, "Local Man Missing. Harold Bennett vanishes without a trace." The article described how Bennett had been last seen leaving his home on the evening of October 15th, carrying a small wooden box. He was supposed to meet a friend at the old oak tree in the town's park, but he never arrived. Despite a thorough search, neither Bennett nor the box was ever found. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. The letter had been written the very day Bennett disappeared. What if the key and the promise had something to do with his disappearance? And why had the letter only arrived now, 100 years too late? Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan decided to visit the old oak tree mentioned in the letter. The tree still stood in the town's park, a towering, ancient giant whose gnarled branches stretched high into the sky. It was late afternoon by the time he arrived, the sun casting long shadows across the ground as it dipped toward the horizon. Ethan circled the tree, his eyes scanning the ground for any sign of what might have happened that night so many years ago. As he walked, his foot struck something hard beneath the fallen leaves. Kneeling down, he uncovered a small, weathered wooden box, half buried in the earth. His heart pounded as he brushed the dirt away, revealing a keyhole in the front. The key! Ethan hesitated for a moment, then carefully opened the box. Inside, nestled in a bed of faded velvet, lay an old iron key, dark with age, but still intact. There was something else in the box, too. A small piece of parchment, folded and yellowed. Unfolding it, Ethan found a simple message. Harold, if you are reading this, it means the time has come. Use the key wisely and remember our oath. The future depends on it. Edward Ethan's hands trembled as he held the key. He didn't know what door it was meant to unlock or what the future held, but he felt a deep sense of responsibility settle over him. Whatever Harold Bennett had been protecting, it was now up to Ethan to continue the legacy. That evening, back at home, Ethan spread out the contents of the wooden box on the kitchen table. The key and the two letters lay before him, remnants of a mystery that had spanned a century. He knew he needed to find out more about the Order of the Eternal Watch, the secret society hinted at in the letters. If Edward Graves and Harold Bennett were part of such a group, there must be records or clues somewhere that could shed light on their mission. Ethan's search led him to the town's small private library. The building was old, with creaking floors and the musty smell of ancient books. The librarian, an elderly man with round glasses and a kindly face, greeted him as he entered. "Good morning," the librarian said in a voice as soft as the rustle of pages. "How can I help you?" Ethan hesitated. "I'm doing some research on a man named Harold Bennett. He lived in my house in the 1920s, and I found some letters addressed to him. I was wondering if there might be any records here that could help me learn more about him." The librarian's expression grew thoughtful. "Harold Bennett. Yes, I remember reading about him. He was quite the regular here in his day, always poring over old books and manuscripts, looking for something. I never knew what, but he was a man of secrets, that's for sure." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Do you know if he ever mentioned a key or anything about an order?" The librarian's eyes narrowed slightly. "A key, you say?" "He never spoke of it directly, but there was a room he frequented, a private study reserved for special patrons. It's been locked since the day he disappeared." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Is there any way I could see the room?" The librarian nodded slowly. "Follow me." Ethan followed the librarian down a narrow corridor lined with dusty portraits and old maps. At the end of the hallway stood a heavy wooden door with an ornate lock. The librarian produced a large iron key from his pocket and handed it to Ethan. "I suppose it's only fitting that you be the one to open it," the librarian said with a small smile. Ethan inserted the key into the lock and turned it with a satisfying click. The door creaked open, revealing a small, windowless room lined with bookshelves. In the center of the room stood a large wooden desk, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. But what immediately caught Ethan's eye was the object resting on the desk, a metal box, identical to the one he had found beneath the old oak tree. His hand shook as he approached the desk. He carefully lifted the lid of the box, revealing a second key, this one intricately designed, with strange symbols etched into its surface. Next to the key was a leather-bound journal. Ethan picked it up and began to read. The journal belonged to Harold Bennett. Its pages were filled with notes, drawings, and letters, all detailing a secret society dedicated to protecting a powerful artifact, the very key now in Ethan's possession. The key, according to Bennett's writings, was said to unlock a portal to another realm, a place where time and space intersected in ways that could alter the fabric of reality itself. The society, known as the Order of the Eternal Watch, had sworn to keep the key safe from those who would use it for evil. As Ethan read further, he learned that Edward Graves, Bennett's closest friend and fellow member of the Order, had sent the letter as a final warning. Bennett had hidden the key just before he vanished, hoping that someone trustworthy would one day find it and continue the Order's mission. But Bennett's disappearance was still a mystery, one that Ethan was now determined to solve. The last entry in the journal was dated October 15th, 1924. The key is hidden where the past meets the present. The old church bell tower at midnight. Edward and I will meet there tonight to ensure its safety. If anything happens to us, may the next guardian find this journal and carry on our work. The future depends on it. Ethan closed the journal, his mind racing. The old church bell tower, of course. It was one of the oldest structures in town, a relic from a bygone era that had stood the test of time. If Bennett and Graves had hidden the key there, it was likely still there, waiting for someone to retrieve it. That night, Ethan made his way to the church. The town was quiet, the streets empty as he walked under the pale light of the full moon. The church loomed ahead, its bell tower rising like a sentinel against the night sky. As Ethan approached, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down his spine. He entered the church through a side door, his footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. The bell tower was accessible through a narrow staircase that spiraled upward, its stone steps worn smooth by centuries of use. Ethan climbed the stairs, his heart pounding with anticipation. At the top, he found the bell, its massive form silent and still. Beneath it, in a small alcove, was a stone pedestal with an intricate lock, one that matched the symbols on the key he had found in the library. With trembling hands, Ethan inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The pedestal shifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, he found an ornate hourglass, pulsing with a soft, ethereal light. The artifact. Ethan held the hourglass in his hand, feeling its warmth and power. The journal's writings had described it as a device that could open a gateway to other realms, a tool that could reshape reality. And now, it was in his possession. But as Ethan stood there, the weight of the responsibility settled on him. The Order had dedicated their lives to keeping this artifact safe, and now it was his turn. He knew he couldn't keep it. Its power was too great, too dangerous. It needed to be hidden again, perhaps in a place where it would never be found. As the church bells chimed midnight, casting eerie echoes through the night, Ethan made his decision. He would honor Harold Bennett's legacy and the promise made beneath the old oak tree. The artifact would remain hidden, and its secret would be buried with him. Ethan returned the hourglass to its compartment and locked it away, sealing the key inside the metal box once more. He left the church in silence, the full moon lighting his path as he walked away. The past had reached out to him, and now he had ensured that its secrets would remain safe, preserved for another 100 years, if not forever. As Ethan descended the bell tower steps, his mind still buzzed with thoughts of what he had uncovered. The journal had hinted at dangers, beyond just the artifact itself, dangers tied to those who would stop at nothing to wield its power. He had hidden the key and artifact, but what if someone else came looking for them? What if the threats that Harold Bennett and Edward Graves had faced a century ago were still lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike? Ethan decided to return to the library the next day, hoping to find more information about the Order of the Eternal Watch. If there were still members out there or records of their activities, he needed to know. The librarian greeted him with a knowing smile as Ethan entered the Archive of Antiquities. "Did you find what you were looking for?" the librarian asked, his voice gentle but probing. Ethan hesitated. "I found some answers, but I think there's more I need to understand." The librarian nodded slowly, as if expecting this. The Order was secretive, but their purpose was noble. They protected the world from forces most of us can't even imagine. Harold Bennett was one of their most dedicated members. If you've taken up his mantle, then there's something you should know. The librarian led Ethan to a back room filled with ancient scrolls and dusty ledgers. He pulled out a thick leather-bound book and handed it to Ethan. "This is the history of the Order, as far as it's been recorded. It will tell you more about their work, their enemies, and the artifact you've hidden." Ethan spent the next several hours poring over the book. The Order had been established centuries ago, a small group of scholars, mystics, and warriors united by a single goal: to protect humanity from the dark forces that sought to exploit powerful relics like the one Ethan had just hidden. The book detailed numerous artifacts, each with its own history and dangers, and the Order's tireless efforts to keep them out of the wrong hands. One passage caught Ethan's attention. It described a group known as the Shadowed Circle, a clandestine organization bent on acquiring these artifacts to reshape the world according to their twisted vision. The Circle had clashed with the Order many times, and while they had been driven underground, the book warned that they were never truly defeated. Ethan's heart sank as he read on. The Shadowed Circle had been particularly interested in the artifact he had just hidden, a device capable of bending time and space. potentially altering reality itself. The Order had managed to keep it hidden for centuries, but the Circle had always been close behind, searching, waiting for the opportunity to strike. Ethan realized that hiding the artifact wasn't enough. If the Shadowed Circle learned of its existence, they would come for it, and they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. He needed to find a way to protect the artifact permanently, to ensure it could never be used by those who would bring harm. Returning the book to the librarian, Ethan felt a new resolve. "Is there anyone left from the Order?" he asked. "Anyone who can help?" The librarian's eyes softened with sympathy. "The Order has diminished over the years, but there are still a few who carry on the legacy. I can put you in touch with someone who might be able to help." He handed Ethan a small, old-fashioned business card. The name on it was simply A. Cartwright, with an address in a neighboring town. "She's one of the last," the librarian said. "If anyone can guide you, it's her." That evening, Ethan made the trip to the address on the card. It led him to a quaint cottage on the edge of a dense forest. The door was answered by an elderly woman with sharp eyes and an air of quiet authority. "You must be Ethan," she said before he could introduce himself. "I've been expecting you." Inside, the cottage was filled with books, artifacts, and strange symbols Ethan couldn't decipher. A. Cartwright, or Anna, as she introduced herself, listened patiently as Ethan recounted his discoveries, the letter, the key, and the artifact. "You did well to hide it," Anna said once he finished. "But as you've learned, it won't be enough. The Shadowed Circle has eyes and ears everywhere. They'll sense the artifact's presence eventually." "What can I do?" Ethan asked, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Anna studied him for a moment. "The artifact must be sealed, its power contained so that it can never be used. The Order knew of a ritual, a binding ceremony that would lock its power away, but it requires a sacrifice." Ethan felt a chill at the word. "What kind of sacrifice?" "Not a life," Anna reassured him, "but something of great personal value, something that ties you to this world. The binding ritual demands a token of love or memory, something that holds deep meaning to you. Once the ritual is complete, the artifact will be sealed, and the Shadowed Circle will no longer be able to sense its power." Ethan nodded, though the idea of sacrificing something so personal weighed heavily on him. He thought of his father's watch, a cherished heirloom passed down through generations. It was one of the few things he had left from his family, a reminder of his roots and the love that had shaped him. But he knew that the watch would be the perfect token for the ritual. The next day, Ethan returned to the church with Anna, carrying the watch and the journal. They climbed the bell tower together, and there, under Anna's guidance, Ethan performed the binding ritual. As he placed the watch next to the hourglass, he felt a surge of emotion, grief, loss, but also a deep sense of purpose. Anna chanted ancient words, and the air around them seemed to hum with energy. The hourglass glowed brighter, then dimmed as the power within it was sealed. The watch vanished, absorbed into the artifact, and the compartment closed with a final, resounding click. "It is done," Anna said softly. "The artifact is now dormant, its power locked away. The Shadowed Circle will not find it here." Ethan felt a profound sense of relief. He had fulfilled his role, carrying on the legacy of Harold Bennett and the Order of the Eternal Watch. The artifact was safe, and the world, for now, was protected. As he and Anna left the church, the first light of dawn breaking on the horizon, Ethan felt a strange peace settle over him. The past had reached out to him, and he had answered the call. He knew that the future might still hold challenges, but he also knew that he was not alone. The Order might have diminished, but its spirit lived on. In him, in Anna, and in those who would continue to protect the world from the shadows. Ethan walked away from the church. The weight of the past finally lifted from his shoulders. He had faced the unknown, honored a promise made a century ago, and in doing so, had found a new sense of purpose in his own life. The future was uncertain, but Ethan was ready to face it, knowing that he was part of something greater, a guardian of secrets, a keeper of the flame.